right, guys, so here was your mastery check, which was our practice quiz. Let's go through the answers just in case you're confused by my feedback or you submitted it late. So this function is a linear. It's in slope-intercept form. So y equals mx plus b. B is the beginning. This is also known as my y-intercept. So I'm going to go to the y-axis and I'm going to go down 2. 1, 2. So there's that point. The other part is m. So m is, should never include the x. I got a little circle happy there. So m is 5/3. M is the movement, and a lot of you guys remember learning slope as rise over run. So we're going to think we are rising 5, running 3 from my beginning or my y-intercept. So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 over 3. There's the point, and then I want to try to do my best to draw a straight line. So it's not perfect, but I'm going to look at these points. Number 2, I'm going to go a little faster because it's the same form. So it's a linear because there's a degree of 1. My b here is -5, so I'm going to go down 5 on my y-axis. My movement here, or my slope, is -3. So since it does not have a denominator, I'm going to divide it by 1 because dividing -3 by 1 doesn't change the value of it. And now I can see, well, it's the opposite of rising. So I'm going to fall 3 and run 1. So if I fall 3 and run 1, I kind of come off of my graph. So I could also go the opposite direction and go up 3, left 1. And this line's a little bit steeper, so I tried to give myself an extra point in graphing it, and I'm kind of sideways so that you guys can see it, but hope that makes sense. All right, so now we want to write it in slope-intercept form. So these two are going backwards, so I'm going to find my m and my b. So to find the movement, I just want to find 2 points, and I don't want to use points that don't hit the corners of the box. So like that's a really good point. And the next clear point I see is probably here. So I have my 2 points, and what I mean by these are the boxes. So you want to make sure the line goes directly through there. All right, this one is going up. We always read from left to right. So we're reading this. It's going up 1, 2, 3, 4. So we say my slope is rising 4. And then it's going over 1, 2, 3. So that's over 3. All right, so I have the first part of my equation. You want to check to make sure this can't simplify, which it can't. Nothing goes into 4 and 3. B is just the point on the y-axis. So here's my y-axis. This point right here is 0, -1. So that means my B is -1. Okay, let's look at number 4. I'm going to go a little bit faster. So first thing I notice as I look at this graph from left to right is it's going down. That tells me that my slope is going to be negative. So I want to go ahead and find 2 points. That's a good point. That's a good point. Okay, if I look, this is down 1, so -1, and then over 2. Down 1, over 2. So my slope here is -1/2 x. A lot of you guys forgot to put the x. You need y and x so that you're showing the relationship between those 2 variables. Next part is just to find this b. So if I look, it's hitting my y-axis at 1. So that's going to be +1. Okay, now down here, point slope form. So point slope is y minus y1 equals m x minus x1. So it's called point slope because your point is your x1, y1. So this is going to be x1, this is y1, and then slope, point slope. So my slope is 5/4. We always want y and x unless it's a horizontal or vertical line, but when we're writing these, we're going to leave the y's and x's. Those don't get substituted in. So y minus y1, or remember, we think of these negatives as saying opposite of. So opposite of 5 is -5. My m is right here. That's going to be 5/4. X opposite of 4 would be -4. You do not have to do anything else from here because that is point slope form. So you're done. All right, number 6 is modified point slope form. So modified point slope form is you take point slope form and you solve it for y. You don't even have to distribute, so you're just moving this y1 over. So essentially it's going to look like this. X minus x1 plus y1, which looks a lot like vertex form or absolute value, but there's no squared. Squared would make it vertex form. Absolute value would have bars here. Okay, so I don't have slope. I know I have an x1, y1, so that's my first x, first y, and then I have a second point, so I call this the second x and the second y. So I can find slope by doing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So negative 4 minus a negative 5. 2 negatives is a plus. Negative 4 plus 5 gives me 1. Negative 3 minus negative 1. Or if you want, you could be thinking opposite again, because it does just change that. Whenever you have a negative in your formula, it's saying opposite of. So negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. All right, great. I know my m value is negative 1/2. So negative 1/2 we could write as negative 1/2 with the negative in front. You would get credit if you had negative 1 over 2, or if you have 1 over negative 2. You just can't have negative 1 over negative 2, because 2 negatives would make that a positive. All right, let's look at opposite of x1 would be 1, because it's opposite of negative 1. And then copy my y1, so that's just negative 5. All right, let's look at number 7. So number 7, first thing I notice is this little squared. That tells me this is a quadratic. So a quadratic is going to make a U or a parabola. This is if it's positive in front, and this is if it's negative. So I see this negative, so I'm thinking this. For quadratics, we use vertex form most of the time when we're graphing. Your vertex form, these HKs, make your vertex. So opposite of this one, because there's that negative again, there's the opposite. So my vertex for this one would be negative 3, 4, because there's no opposite of in front of the K. So I'm just going to change the sign of what's inside and keep the one of outside. So negative 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we want to make sure we open down. So I'm going to move right 1. So if I go right 1, I want to do a times 1 squared. A is this value, right? The one in front. So negative 2 times 1, because 1 squared is 1, gives me negative 2. Right 1, down 2. Remember, this is my axis of symmetry. So this point is going to get mirrored over here, okay, because it's a line of symmetry. If I want to go right 2, I'm going to do a times 2 squared. So a is negative 2. 2 squared is 4. So right 2, down 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I want to mirror that point over here. Draw a curve to make it a U or a parabola. And there's my graph. Domain is your x values. So we want to go from left to right. The left side has an arrow. So remember, left side is negative infinity. The right side has an arrow, and that's positive infinity. When you write domain and range, you always want to go smallest to biggest. All right, range are your y values. So the smallest y's are actually down here. This one comes up from negative infinity, and then it stops right here. That's 4, and I want to include it because that's a solid point. Absolute values are very similar. So when we do absolute value, our function is written as a absolute value of x minus h plus k. hk, again, is your vertex. And this a works similar to a slope in a linear, except for absolute value is distance from 0. So if I say I'm 2 away from 0, I could be 2 this distance, or I could be 2 this direction. not distance, 2 to the right or 2 to the left. So absolute values, when you see these bars, make V's. So it's going to open up if A is positive, and then it opens down when A is negative. All right, so my vertex here, remember it's the opposite of what's inside. So my vertex is going to be -1, and then the same of what's outside, so 2. So I'm going to go -1, 1, 2. This one is positive, so I'm going to realize it's going to open up. And since there's no number here, I know there's really a 1, because 1 times anything does not change the value. So as I graph my points, I'm going to go up 1 over 1 to the right. And then this also has an axis of symmetry here. So I could go up 1 to the left to get the other side of my function. All right, let's move a little bit faster through domain and range. So domain is your x values. So left is -infinity. Right, still an arrow, +infinity. Range goes from bottom to top because this is my y. So the bottommost point here is 2, and I'm including that because it's a solid point. And this one doesn't have a top. It goes on forever. So the way we say that is infinity. Okay, guys, I hope that helps.